Yes, so we have seen many representations of the Boolean functions, right? As a vector, as a truth table, and so on. Today we are going to see a very, very important representation, which is a polynomial representation over real numbers. The way we are going to do it is by first generalizing our definition of Boolean functions, right? Remember, this is what a Boolean function is. First, let me generalize the range to real numbers. We will see that each such function can be represented as a polynomial. Then we will see that, we have been talking about this 0, 1, -1, 1. These are similar things. So we will go to -1, 1 domain. And then we will see a similar polynomial representation can be done for this input domain also. And this polynomial representation is called the Fourier representation. We are going to go very deep into this Fourier representation, but this is the essential idea of how things are going to be done today. The first objective is, let us look at this function. Is this a Boolean function? Yes, no?
Yes.
No, it is not a Boolean function. Look at the range. Range is not 0, 1. It is R. Right? So this is a generalization of Boolean function.
Okay.
Today, when we talk about polynomial representation, there will be a polynomial representation for this generalized Boolean functions. And when we restrict it to Boolean functions, then we will see some nice ones. That is what you have to remember. The theory is true in generality. Some of the specific properties are going to work when we restrict our range to be 0, or -1. Okay, but for us at this point, these are the functions we are talking about. Any question? Okay, good. You have seen many such functions. You have seen OR, AND, NOR, parity, majority, many such functions, right? Let me give you a specific function. Okay. This function is 1 when all the input bits are 1 and 0 otherwise. Do you know this function?
And
Sorry?
and function.
AND function, right? Can you write a polynomial whose value agrees with AND function? So we want an expression like something like this: polynomial in x1, x2, xn, such that whenever I put the values like this 2 to the power n value input values, right, I get the correct answer as a real. So I want to represent AND like a polynomial.
It's just the product of all xi.
Very good. That was easy, right? x1, x2, xn. If I look
Right.
at this, this is only 1 if x1 equal to 1, x2 equal to 1, xn. Sounds good. Let's change our problem slightly. I want a polynomial for the function which is 1 only if my input is 1, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And can someone other than the person who answered last time, can they tell me a polynomial?
Wherever they are 0, just negate those values.
What do you mean by negate?
I mean, replace it by 1 minus that variable. So,
Okay, very good. Right. So it is negation means xi goes to 1 minus xi, right? So if it is 1, then I write x1. If it is 0, then I write 1 minus x2 and x. Sounds good? Does everyone agree that this polynomial px is only non-zero and it's only 1 at the input 1 0 0 1 1 1 1 1 and nowhere else?
Yes.
Right? There is a slight subtlety here. Remember that our input variables, we are just, when we say input, they are going on from 0, 1. They can actually be put as reals here, right? This is a real polynomial. Nobody stops us from writing x1 equal to 2, x2 equal to 1, x3 equal to 1, but our function is not defined. So when I talk about polynomial representation, I mean for all my interesting inputs, my polynomial should be equal to x. It doesn't mean that the polynomial is only defined on these inputs. It is defined, actually the polynomial will be defined over entire r to the power, though I care only on these. This is what means by polynomial representation of the function. That's clear? Right? This way, I can always write the indicator polynomial of any a, where a is some string from 0, 1 to the power n, right? And what is this polynomial? This is phi I such that ai equal to 1, I will put xi, and I such that ai equal to 0, I will put 1 as suggested. So for these special functions which are one only at one place, I can write the polynomial representation. Any doubts about this? This is simple, right? Is this okay? Okay. Since I heard no doubts, I assume it is okay. But now if we know it, my claim is that we can write polynomial for polynomial representation for any Boolean function. How? So I
Using
now
the DNF.
using the
Using the DNF, just replace every negation by 1 minus xi.
but what about or?
Oh, for replace the or with plus. Okay, wait. That would probably not work. Huh?
no, plus will work, right? Because only one of them will, I mean, it's an indicator function, right? So,
No, but in a
Yes,
DNF,
so
but in a
you will have to
DNF
use
it needs
the
not be true.
yeah. So you will have to use the unsimplified form of the DNF, the complete SOP form.
You can just use not of and like not of
basically, I mean, you can add all those indicator functions. I mean, wherever it is going on. So you can just include those indicator functions.
Right. So you are thinking of more complicated things. The easiest way is look at the truth table. Wherever the function value is 1, just add up those indicator polynomials. Correct? If I want to write fx, then sum over all a such that fa equal to 1. There are going to be how many a's can be there? At most 2 to the power n, right? So at most 2 to the power n ones could be there. Whatever are 1, take those a's, write the indicator. this would have been okay if my functions were Boolean. But my functions are not Boolean, right? They are actually, their output can be real numbers. So what should I do?
Why are we caring for the real output? Because we want the polynomial to give the values only at the variables we are interested in, right?
No. I just said that we want to generalize this. No? We are going to write it in terms of this whenever the function is taking even real values. That will be useful later.
Okay, then apply some, I mean, f of multiply them by f of each of those indicator functions.
Very good. That is also not very difficult, right? We will generalize the theory at not much complications. We will just multiply by fa. Makes sense? Everyone agrees that this is a Boolean polynomial representation of a function of this kind. Because if I take any particular a, only one of the terms will fire.
Why are we writing FA again? I mean, under the summation,
A is
it's
1, right?
already written f of a is 1.
Oh, sorry. Now,
So are you meaning to say that a is from 0 to the power n minus 1?
very good? Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Now things have changed slightly. I will take fa over, and clearly this is taking care of the previous equation also, right? When I restrict fa to be 0 or 1, then it becomes the equation which was available. Sounds good? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yes, good. Actually, notice a few things here, right? First thing I want to mention is that this is what we call a multilinear polynomial. Right? In the sense that no xi square or xi cube or xi to the power 4 appears in this. The way we have constructed it, that is true. Right? By the way we have constructed it, this is called interpolation. This is the term for constructing the polynomials like this, making them input by input. This is called interpolation. And if you look at these indicator polynomials, none of them have xi square or xi cube or any power of xi more than v. That's why when even I add them, I will not have square, cube, or to the power 4 powers. No powers more than 1. That means in the variables, every variable, my polynomial is a linear polynomial. Do you agree?
Yes.
Anyone has a doubt there? Because I'm going to take a jump now. Another thing. What about, so this is about, it is a linear in every variable. What about the total degree?
Less than equal to n.
Right. So total degree is going to be less than n. Precisely because there are n variables, none of them can have degree more than 1. But can it have degree equal to n?
Yes.
Why?
If you take the indicator function only, I mean, f of x equals to.
Very good, very good. You just take the indicator function, you will see that for every indicator function, the degree is n. Sounds good. So then my claim is going to be that every function can be written as this. I shouldn't, sorry. I shouldn't write it as f at s, but some coefficient as, and then sounds fine. That's okay, right? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So what I'm saying is that what could be the possible monomials when you open all the terms up, right? You have 1 minus x1, 1 minus x2, 1 minus x3. Some of them are multiplied x4. Finally, the terms can only be of this kind. You'd pick some subset of n, and then x1, x2, x3, x3, x4, x5, x1, x2, x3, x4, some subset like that. Because you cannot have terms like x1 square, x2, x3. You can't have terms like x1 square, x2 square, x3 also, right? That's why these are the only terms which are going to be there. Many of these ASs can be 0. That's not a problem. But finally, my function will look like this. Sounds good?
Yes.
Good. Since it is all clear to you, then it is your time to answer the question. You claimed, or one of you claimed, that for AND, we needed a degree n polynomial. Correct? AND of x1 to xn. But now my point is, probably this is one polynomial, but there is some other polynomial whose degree is not n, x1, x2 plus x2, x3 minus x5, x1, something like that. What is the guarantee that no other polynomial is there which can be equal to n, and which might have a lesser degree by the way? Do you see my point? You have given me one representation, polynomial representation.
Can you repeat? Can you
Yes.
just repeat what
Yeah,
you are asking?
So, in other words, what I'm asking is this polynomial representation unique? Because
Okay, so it is unique because for every single term in the polynomial, in the simplified polynomial, so for example, if xi is not present there, so we could just write one as one plus one. We could just write one as xi plus 1 minus xi and then split it in that way. So we could make it into an initial polynomial with all in the original form of indicator functions, sum of indicator functions.
no, but that is just a guess. It could be just something else, something very, very different, which can match with the indicator polynomial, or two different functions. Probably it might not happen for indicator polynomials, but for some other polynomials, for some other function f, there might be two polynomials such that p1x is equal to p2x for all x element of 0, 1, 2, where both p1 and p2 are multilinear, degree less than n, whatever, of that form, right? The form which I described, summation ax, this kind of a form. What stops? You are saying that if I
Okay,
take one,
so I think there are in total 2 to the power n coefficients of AS, and when we put in values of when we put in all the values in 0, 1 to the power n, we could get 2 to the power n equations in 2 to the power n variables. So it should have a unique solution, I think.
you are saying that you will get 2 to the power n equations. What are the variables? But it need not be, what do you say, a full, like some constraints could be dependent on each other, right? Why are those to the power n constraints linearly independent?
Right. That could happen.
So is the question clear to everyone? Because please, we are very, very few people. If it is not clear, stop now. These things are very nice mathematically and will make sense to you. So anyone has a question of what we are doing? We are trying to prove uniqueness of the polynomial representation, which we just saw. We saw that every function can be represented as a polynomial. We are asking, can it happen that it is not unique? Can there be two polynomials such that they have the same representation? Remember, our representation is
We can prove it inductively.
okay.
First, the constant should be equal, because if I put all the variables to be 0, then the constant should be equal.
Okay.
Then if I choose just one of the variables and get put the value 1, then corresponding to that variable, the corresponding SS coefficient should be the same, and then we can build upon that.
Okay, right. This could be tried, but yeah, so let me say it in a simpler form. Good. You are in the right direction. But there is a simpler way. In induction, you might get into trouble. You can get out of it also. But let me say,
So can we go by, considering the indicator functions, considering them as a basis vector, something like that? Because basically what we are trying to say is that there exists a unique representation, and any of those indicator functions will give out, if we are able to show that from that representation we can only get to one of these polynomial representations, then I guess it might be true. We have to.
very good. That is also a very, very nice way of seeing things. So let's try that, right? So every function actually is just a vector in R to the power n. Do you agree?
Yes.
Correct? Because it has, you just look at the last column of the truth table. This we saw before, right? So it was 0, 1 to the power n, or f2 to the power n when the range was Boolean. But since the range is real, then my function looks like this. It's basically a vector space. And if I look at the indicator polynomials, these are going to form the basis of this vector space. Right? These are actually the elementary things which form the basis. Right? And that shows that there is a, how many indicator functions are there? This identity AX?
2 power 2 power n.
To the power
sorry.
n.
Yeah, to the power n. Yeah.
2 to the power n indicator functions. All of them are linearly independent. That means they will form a basis. Implies this polynomial representation is unique. Sounds good. Actually, as an exercise, you should forget about this. You can just directly prove it. The idea would be, suppose P1x is equal to P2x. That basically means that P1 minus P2x is equal to 0. Right? For all x in this. And now, remember, this was of this form. What you need to show is that if any AS is not equal to 0, and here you will use the same ideas which Udit said in for the induction argument. A similar idea will be used like the induction argument, and you will have to show that if any AS is non-zero, then there exists some x element of 0, 1 to the n such that P1x minus P2x is not. This will give you a confirmation. But I will leave it to you to finalize this argument. This is the direct way to prove that our representation is unique. Okay. So this sounds good. For functions of this kind, we have a unique multilinear polynomial representation. Any questions about this?
Yeah, could you explain the previous method once using the basis way?
The basis one,
Yes.
sure. If I talk about these functions, right, these are all the vectors in r to the power 2 to the power. This is something which we saw before also, right? This was one of the representations for any boolean. So a
Yes.
boolean, sorry, not a boolean function, but a function whose range is r is same as a vector in r to the power 2 to the power n. And if I have a vector in r to the power 2 to the power n, then I can convert it into a function.
Hmm.
Agreed. Now, given a vector in r to the power 2 to the power n, I am going to write it in terms of the basis of any basis, correct? So what is the basis? This IAX is going to be the basis.
But how are the 2 to the power n basis vectors independent? Because we can like take
Look at their representation as 0, 1, right? They have only 1, 1 and 1 coordinate. Everywhere else they are 0. Right? This is the standard basis which we look at.
no, there are 2 to the power n indicator functions, right? But if then
And
like you said
dimension is
that
also to the power n.
oh, okay, dimension is 2 to the power n. Okay, yes. Yeah, got it.
Okay, sounds good. So this was a warm-up, actually. What we want to do is carry out the similar argument when the domain is -1, 1 instead of r. And that will be the Fourier representation of the functions. The task is clear. We found out unique polynomial representation for f when f was 0, 1 to the power n to r. We want to do it for -1, 1. And what will be the first step? If you want to do it,
Linear relationships between 0, 1 and -1, 1.
Find the indicator function.
or yeah, let's find the indicator. So you can do that relationship, but let's what about the indicator? Now a is element of -1, 1 to the power, and I want to find a function which is 0 at a particular point and 1 at other points. Then what is IAX? Can you tell me this as a polynomial? No higher education is needed in this. This is something which you can ask a student in 8th class or something. Right? So you want to create a polynomial in terms of x1, x2, xn, which matches with the function IAX. But now the problem is a is at -1, 1 to the power.
Wherever it is one, you keep it that way. And
What do you mean by keep it that way?
I mean, if it is, if some, I mean, if no, yeah, sorry, convert every of those x as 1 minus x1, I guess, x1 by 2. Yeah, I guess.
Right? You can convince yourself that this is going to be true. If ai is equal to 1, then this 1 plus x1 by 2 will be 1. If ai is -1, then this thing will be 0. Correct? Similarly, when ai is -1, then 1 minus x1 by 2 will be 1 and otherwise 0. Correct? So this is the indicator function. Are you convinced that this is the indicator function for input for a? Right? And now by the similar argument, fx can be written as, again, you will open it up, there will be some coefficients, you can collect the same coefficients for same monomials, like x1, x2 will appear in different indicators. Remember, this is going to be the expression, right? But here your expression does not have monomials. When you open it up and collect all the monomials, finally you will have an expression.
So the last page by x1, you mean AI?
Sorry, where?
In the last page, this formula for indicator function. What is
No.
x1?
This is it's a polynomial, right? Oh, xi, sir. xi. xi.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
What was the
XI.
logic
Yeah,
behind
yeah.
this?
Sorry.
What was the logic behind this? So
Oh,
if AI is, yeah,
you remember what we did in 0, 1 case, right?
yes,
We had, when it was 0, we put 1 minus x or 1 minus xi. Why? Because 1 minus xi is 1 when the value agrees with what we want, and when it doesn't agree, then we get a 0.
okay.
So when AI is 1, it is 0, and
When
So-
when
a-
AI is minus 1, it is 1.
So instead of taking 1 plus xi by 2, we can take xi, right?
no. But what will happen when it is minus 1? If I take it as xi instead of 1 plus xi by 2, if I take xi and I take ai equal to minus 1, then it will not give me, that term will not become 0. No, I want an indicator polynomial.
Okay, yeah.
Don't get confused between domain and range. My domain is minus 1 comma 1 to the power n. My range is real. In the indicator case, I will have value 1. Function value will be 1 when input is a and 0 everywhere else. That's what I want. Right?
Okay, yeah.
You can convert into minus 1 comma 1. That's easy, right? You have got a value of 0 comma 1. How to convert into minus 1 comma 1? You have these 2x minus 1 or 1 minus 2x or whatever you can. So in the range also, if you want to go from 0 comma 1 to minus 1 comma 1, the transformations are very, very simple. That is something which you don't have to.
Okay, so in this indicator function, the range is also 0, 1 as
The
before.
range is real, but we are going to only use 0 comma 1 for the indicator.
Okay.
Right? Yes. So now this was in terms of the indicator functions, and when I open up all the things, I will get fx as equal to some coefficient b as x. Right? This is similar to the case of 0 comma. Do you agree?
Yes.
Right. Now the thing starts. This is called the Fourier representation, but a bit of notation here. This is called the Fourier coefficient on set S. This is called the parity on set S. These are partial parities, right? I choose a subset of x1 to xn and take a parity over that subset. Right? You remember the parity function? It was minus 1 if odd number of minus 1s are there, and it is 1 if even number of minus 1s were. So the representation of parity was very, very simple. x1 to xn was x1 to xn. Remember in the 0 comma 1 case, this polynomial represented n, but now we are in the minus 1 comma 1. In the minus 1 comma 1 case, x1 to xn is going to represent parity, and you can take parities on the subsets also. And now I am writing fx in this. So the statement becomes that fx is equal to this representation, right? This is called the Fourier representation.
to explain this transformation, where BS is just represented as like you're just writing it as F hat S.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
that's
And then what about this parity? What you
you remember the representation of
Yeah,
parity
yeah.
function? So then I'm
Yes.
saying that this is just a parity over a smaller number of variables, right? Over the variables on S, not on the complete set.
Then the interested domain is minus 1 comma 1, right? If we take
The
this
domain
represent-
is, yes, domain now we are into
interested
minus one
range.
comma.
Interested range is minus 1 comma 1. If
No,
we
no, no.
take
No,
this
no.
representation of
No,
parity.
for the range for parity would be minus 1 comma 1. It will not use anything else. But if you look at this equation 1, since f at s is any real number, right? F at s is any real number, that means the range is the complete real number, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Good. Uh, this is an important representation, right? And like before, actually, we are going to see its uniqueness, and that will be done by actually proving this chi-sx for all s, right? There are again to the power n subsets. We are writing the function as a linear combination of these chi-sx's. We are going to show that these are linearly. Actually, more strongly, they are going to form an orthogonal basis of r to the power 2. The next objective is clear now.
So how is the inner product defined for two polynomials in our vector
Very
space?
good. Very good. So it should not be for two polynomials. It should be for two functions. Correct?
Yeah, for functions.
Yes. So actually, you are right. You can talk about polynomial, but yeah, we have to. We know, right? Because every function is an element of r to the power 2 to the power n. Correct?
Correct.
Right. So what would be your guess? What should be the inner product of f composed with g? How do you take inner product in r to the power 2 to the power n?
We just multiply individually
Coordinate
and add.
wise.
Yeah.
Right.
So this would be the Hamming weight of the ands of f and g.
You have to be careful, right? This is not 0 comma 1 domain. This is minus 1 comma 1 domain, and your
Okay.
final value is real number, right?
Okay.
All the and and whatever you are thinking would have worked if the range was 0 comma 1. But that's not the case, right? But doesn't this seems obvious? Every 0 comma 1 to the power n is one of the coordinates, no? Every input is a coordinate for this function. So you just multiply at everything and then add. Okay, let's take a step back. Okay, let's take an example, right? I should have taken an example before.
So in the previous page, you talked something about orthogonal basis.
That I will prove later.
Okay.
That I haven't done that yet. But let's take a step back. Let's remember the Fourier transform. Let's find a Fourier transform of this function. Clear? This function is minus 1 if and only if my input is minus 1 comma 1. It is 1 otherwise. Agreed? This is my end function on 2 bits. Any confusion about what this function is? No, right? So then find the Fourier transformation, Fourier representation of this function. I want to write n2x as
So in the Fourier representation we just defined, we had actually chosen the restricted range to be 0, 1 instead of -1 and 1. So do
No,
we
we
have
did
to,
not.
so is that the
No, we did not.
definition of the indicator functions? It was chosen
In
like
the,
that, right?
in the definition of the indicator function, but when you take their linear combination, your range will be the entire real numbers, right? This is what we saw in the 0, 1 case also. We just put, where was that?
So I'm just talking about the restricted range. Let's say we are only right now only caring about inputs in -1, 1 to the power n.
Yes, for
So
that.
so here in the can you go one page back?
See,
So
look at this here, right? This arrow. So this was something whose range was 0, 1, right?
yeah.
But if the range is real, your what do I mean by range is real? I have f 0, 0, f 0, 1, f 1, 0, f 1, 1. These are all real numbers now,
Yeah.
and I can write them like this,
Hmm.
and then my function will have a real range, and this will be the representation.
Yeah. So I was just saying, I was having a little bit of confusion here. So in the definition for the -1 to 1 to the power n Waller domain, can you go there once?
Sure. This one.
So yeah, one page back, just one page back.
Mhm.
Here you have defined the indicator function and subsequently the function fx in such a way that if the input x is in the range -1 to the 1 to the power n, then the output is either 0 or 1, right?
Correct.
So the Fourier representation, it's taken with respect to this polynomial, or do we need to convert it into convert the restricted range to -1 to the power -1, 1 as well? I mean, we just
Forget the
1
range to
minus
be
2 into t.
forget the range
Okay.
to be -1, 1.
Okay.
We are doing it for the range to be real.
Okay. Okay.
And then obviously, if even if your answer is -1, 1, that should agree because that is also a real number. Right?
Okay.
So I understand that since domain is -1, 1, when the range is -1, 1, you might get confused. But the point here is that the output is a real number now. We are doing it as a real number. And as a real number, if it agrees, then whether its value is -1 or 1, it is not going to matter.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
And let me take an example of that, right? That's why let's try and write out this AND function. Right?
Okay.
So the way with as I did with the indicators, let's write. Okay, let's do it together. Help me out here. So what is the function value when input is 1, 1? Okay, so let me write it this way: 1, 1, indicator for 1, 1. Indicator for 1, -1, and so on, right? So what is f of 1, 1? What is end of 1, 1?
1, 1.
Right? That means indicator of 1, 1x plus indicator of 1, -1x plus indicator of -1, 1x minus indicator of -1, -1x. Agreed?
Yeah.
Right? I'm just putting the value of f of end of 1, 1, end of 1, -1. Now let's write the indicator function. Right? What is the indicator for 1, 1?
1 plus x1 by 2, 1 plus x2 by 2.
Then
1 plus x1 by 2, 1 minus x1 by 2. X2 by 2, 1 minus x2 by 2.
correct.
1 minus x1 by 2, 1 plus x2 by 2.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you want to, who is the brave one who will do the calculation and tell me the final value? I want the coefficient of constant coefficient. I want the, how should I say it? Coefficient of x1, coefficient of x2, something plus all these blanks you need to tell me.
It will be 4 in denominator, obviously. And
Yeah, you are not doing the calculation. If you have done the calculation, you will see.
Minus 1 by 4, 1 by 4, 1 by 4, and minus 1 by 4.
Sorry, 1 by 4.
No, it's minus 1 by 4,
Okay.
then 1 by 4, then 1 by 4, and then minus 1 by 4.
You guys are lazy or not? Okay, let's find out. So,
Is it 1 by 2, 1 by 2, 1 by 2, 0?
so which one is it? Is it 1 by 2, 1 by 2, or 1 by 4, 1 by 4?
1 by 2, 1 by 2. Because the constant from the last two will get cancelled out with one of them. So, from the first two, you are getting a contribution of half for the constant.
Yeah, look at the constant term, right? I can see that the constant term is half. Right?
X2 has 1 by 2.
Yes, you could have divided and conquered, right? One can
X1, X2 has minus 1 by 2.
Yes. Okay, so if you open up carefully and cancel out terms, this is what you do, right? Again, you can multiply and add up and all these things, right? That's fine, right? So you can come up to this, and now you can see here, right? If you take x1 to be 1 and x2 to be 1.
Just the signs of x1 and sign of x1 into x2. It should be minus, right? Minus half.
Signs
are like half,
Yeah.
minus half.
The signs will change, I guess.
Is this the one?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's fine now. That's the final answer.
I think so, yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Right. And now you can see if x1 is equal to 1 and x2 equal to 1, I will get answer as 1, right? Half plus half plus half minus half. If x1 equal to 1 and x2 equal to minus 1, I will get half plus half minus half plus half. Again 1. That is going to be the same case here also. I'm not going to write it. If x1 equal to minus 1 and x2 equal to minus 1, I will get half minus half minus half and again a minus half. That will give me
Minus.
right. So this should clear out your confusion, right? Our range was minus 1 comma 1, and this formula exactly gives me this because it is agreeing as real numbers, right?
So can we solve it as like 4 equation, 4 variables, and applying that formula of parity formula which we wrote? So can we do it like that?
Sure. But at this point, since we haven't looked at parities as an orthogonal basis, at this point we don't know whether these equations are going to be independent, what kind of solution we will get. But everything is going to be fine. The math is beautiful here. There is going to be a unique representation. You make the equations, you solve, you will find the answer.
Okay.
Okay. but let's okay. So this is fine. So I think this, did this example help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If not, then try out more examples. Take your favorite function and try to get the Fourier representation. Okay, that will help. But now let's get back to what we wanted to do, right? What was the Fourier transform? I was writing my function like this. Correct. And then I wanted to prove that my chi-sx are orthogonal. Or if you want to be nice about it, probably orthogonal. But let's not, we will look at this technicality that will be easily handled. And a very nice question, very good question which was asked was, what is the inner? And the answer is also simple because I am viewing f as a vector in r to the power n, g as a vector in r to the power n. And how do I take it? Take the inner product here. If f is a vector f1 to f to the power n, g was a vector g1 to g to the power n, what will be their inner product? Summation I
FIGI.
right? This all of you should
If
agree,
I-
right? Clear
Yes.
12,
If,
right? But now think about it. This is just labeling. What I'm calling fi is actually the function value at some input. That is how I am representing it as a vector of dimension r to the power n. Oh, sorry, of dimension to the power n. When I write the truth table and I view the last column as a vector in r to the power n, I am, instead of labeling them by I'm labeling them by input. And I'm putting the function value at the input as the column. So fi is f of x, where x is in some sense the ith input. This gives me the idea that my f hat g, f inner product g should be summation over x fx g. Sounds good? What I'm trying to say is that this inner product is very, very natural. The way we have defined our functions as a vector in r to the power n, this has to be the inner product. I don't hear from anyone. Is this confusing?
Got it.
So you are okay with that, right? Now, since you are okay, then I will make things slightly more complicated. What is this? For your favorite S, what is this quantity?
Norm, I guess you can say that.
No, you can tell me the value in terms of N or size of S or something, I don't know.
2 to the power n.
Yes, it is simply 2 to the power n, right? Because you are going to sum up 1 2 to the power n times. And leave alone chi-sx. You take any Boolean function whose output is -1, 1. This quantity is going to be 2 to the power n, right? This is just putting things in the formula. But we want things to be, or like these chi-s's, we want them to be orthonormal. So what we will do is we will define our inner product slightly differently. We will put it as 1 by 2 to the power. I will put a normalization coefficient. This won't change the thing whether f and g are perpendicular to each other. It won't change that. But what it will do is it will say that chi-sx is a vector with length 1. if you haven't seen these small differences in inner product as an abstract definition, trust me, this doesn't change. This is the way in which you can define a dot product. It will still remain a dot. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Now with this inner product, with this inner product in mind, I want to show that chi Sx, chi Tx is equal to 0. In other words, I want to show that if I take all x in minus 1 comma 1 to the power n, this is 0. Actually, to be precise, this is 0 if S and T are different. Otherwise, it is going to be 1. This is what it means to be orthonormal, right? I wanted to show that these functions are going to form an orthonormal basis. Orthonormal basis of what?
R to the power, to the power.
Correct. R to the power, and the space which we are very, very familiar. Right? So orthonormal is fine because we have defined the inner product like that. Now orthogonality means this equation.
Linear independence.
Sorry.
I was saying linear independence.
Yes. Yeah. We are showing something stronger than linear independence. We are showing that they are perpendicular to each other. Right? So let's do the calculations. What will this quantity become? Chi Sx, chi Tx. If there is some I which is present in S as well as T, what will happen to it?
That will go to
It
1.
will be 1.
It will become 1. We can remove it.
Will go to 1.
Right. So this thing is just a parity. So what is this? This is the symmetric difference of S and T. That means things which are in exactly S or in exactly T, they should not be in T. Correct? If it is not in S, not in T, obviously the variable will not be there. If it is in S and T, then it will cancel out. So the only variables which remain are the ones which are in either in S or in T, but not in T. This is the quantity which I want to come up with, and I know that S and T is not M. That means the symmetric difference is not 0. There's at least one variable here. Now, what can I say about this value? How can I show that this is 0?
Here we have some kind of an independence, like so if one variable occurs in S, then it doesn't occur in T. So we could take all the values of -1 and +1 and then keeping the other variables same, and then we would have 0. Those
Right. So let's say x1, without loss of generality, x1 is present in S symmetric difference T. That is fine. Pick any variable which is present in B. Right. Now look at two inputs, one where x1 is 1 and other where it is -1, and some values, a2 up to an, a2 up to n. Correct? What happens? Their contribution gets cancelled out. all my x's can be divided into such pairs. And this is the proof that this quantity is. Okay, let me just say it once again. Chi Sx, that I had written it as S symmetric difference T, it doesn't matter. Look at chi Sx, where x is element of minus 1 comma 1 to the power n. This quantity is 0 if S is not equal. I can and what is the proof? The proof is actually very, very simple. We just divide all inputs into pairs. Let's say I is element of S. So then how do my pair looks? A1 to AI minus 1, 1, AI plus 1 to AN. So in my pair, the inputs are same except at the ith range. And then the contribution of pair is 0. Implying all my complete summation is does that make sense? Is this proof clear? Okay, raise your hand if this proof is not clear. Okay, good. So let's look at n is equal to 2, right? And Anindya, what do you want to take S to? What is your S? Don't take an empty set except you can put any subset of 1 comma 2.
So, 1 minus 1.
Oh, no, it's a subset, right? It's a subset of n. So 1 comma 2 is this is set ka subset. Pick any subset of 1 comma 2.
Okay. 2.
Okay. Right. And now, if you take this as a subset, what am I asking? Now, what is chi S of x? This is just x2. Right? There is just one variable. Now I'm saying, what is this quantity? That means, yes, question?
No, sir.
Okay. So now if I look at the look at the inputs, I will divide it on the basis of x2.
And what if there are multiple, what if the size of S is greater than 1?
Pick your favorite variable. Okay, let's do this. Let's.
Okay.
So this is x1, x2. Okay.
Okay, got it.
Right. So what is your favorite variable, 1 or 2?
Let's say 2 for now.
2 for now, right? Okay. I have 8 inputs. right? So what is about these two? The x2 bit is flipped. Otherwise, everything is same. This is how I'm dividing it into pairs. Right? What about the contribution? This input will contribute 1, but this input will contribute minus 1.
Yeah, they will cancel out.
They will cancel, right? So then this is clear.
Yeah.
The proof of the claim is clear, right?
Yeah.
Anyone having trouble with the proof of the claim? No. Good. That basically means we saw that this was 1 by 2 to the power n summation over x. Right? This was chi sx multiplied by chi tx, but only the symmetric difference will be. But now we know that this is 0.
Can you just quickly go over the part where you came across the symmetric difference? Like how did we arrive at that from x times x stx?
Sure. You think about this, right? Chi tx. Okay. What is happening? You are multiplying every variable in S, then you are multiplying every variable in T. Right? If the variable is not in S, not in T, it will never appear.
Yeah.
If the variable is in S and T, then it will become
So
square.
it will
become
get
1.
squared and it will become 1. Yeah, got it.
Only symmetric difference will exist. Right? So this shows that chi sx form an orthonormal. Okay. The takeaway from today, obviously, you have seen the proofs and everything, but in terms of the takeaway, point is we view f. Remember, where were we? We were thinking of these kind of functions. We view f as a vector in r to the power 2 to the power. And for every f, there is a unique multilinear polynomial. How do we write it? We write fx as summation over s f at s chi sx. These are called the Fourier coefficients. And this is the partial parity on set. We know that all our functions can be written, right? Another important thing, and why is this representation unique? Because chi sx, if I view these functions as vectors in r to the power 2 to the power n, they are actually forming an orthonormal basis. Right? Let me just write it. Representation is unique because chi sx form an orthonormal. The proofs have been covered. What inner product we are talking about, everything that is covered. Knowing all this in the background, important thing is that every vector, every function, not a Boolean function, but where we extended the range to R, every function can be thought of as a vector in R to the power 2 to the power n. It has a unique multilinear representation. It is unique because these nice parities, these are going to be very, very important. These are going to form an orthonormal. If you understand group theory, I would really, really suggest that you read in notes this extra reading section, which will tell you why chi sx are special. This will also give you an insight that why is it called a Fourier. If you understand group theory, please read that section. It will be an enlightening. Okay. Just the last thing I want to talk about today, this is the main takeaway. The last notation is a degree of a function. And what do you guess? What should be the degree of a function?
Polynomial.
It should be the degree of the polynomial. What is the degree of a multilinear polynomial? What is the degree of a polynomial, multilinear polynomial?
Less than equal to n.
No, less than equal to n, but it is maximum cardinality of
Maximum
S.
mod of
Oh.
S where my AS is non-zero.
Yeah,
Yeah.
forget about AS now. It is F at S.
Okay. FS
Right.
is non-zero.
So this is the degree of. Correct?
Sir, I have a question regarding these Fourier transforms.
Just give me a second. Let me finish the lecture, then we can go on to questions. Is that okay? Yeah. So the degree can be thought of as a measure of complexity of the function. Right? Generally, constant functions, linear functions, we think of them as simple functions. If the degree is high, that means function is more complex. We suggested last time also that the size of the representation in itself would give us a complexity measure. Here also, the degree of the function is a very nice complexity measure. This is going to be used a lot of times. So degree is clear. Let me just ask final question. What is the degree of parity?
And
What is the
N.
degree of chi-sx?
Modest.
modest.
Very good. Great. So you know Fourier representation, you know what the degree of it is. This finishes what I wanted to say from my side.